Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be doing the no disclaimers book tag, and this is one that I recently saw my good friend Andrew's Wizardly Reads do. It was a lot of fun, and I'm like, I'm going to have to do this tag. I'm going to try to not use answers that he used because I agreed with a lot of his answers, and so I'm going to try and do some more. But I'm excited to do this one. Just go for it. Probably lose some subscribers, but that's okay. We're gonna just go for it. So question number 1: which trope in books annoys you the most? So school trope is one given. I don't like the school trope very much. There are some ways where it's done well, but I don't care. I didn't like Harry Potter. I don't like the school trope. Another one, and it can be okay if it's done well, but I really hate when you just get like the lazy because fate said it was so, or it was destined to be, even if it makes no freaking sense that this is just how it is. That annoys the crap out of me. Like, think of some other reason versus just having things happen that make no sense, but because it was fated to. It's just lazy. It's just plain lazy. Looking at you, Belgariad, among many others. And then, in general, kind of like the Mary Sue Gary Stu, just character who's magically good at everything. Like make the characters work for it a little bit. There's a lot of characters who, through some reason, or because they're like powerful magic users or stuff, have power at everything, and that's fine. I'm not saying like every character has to die. George R.R. Martin, or anything like that, but just like, have characters struggle. That's what people do. So I feel like those are mostly fairly obvious answers, but those are the tropes that annoy me, I think, the most, that immediately came to mind. Right, prompt number 2, which writer do you feel is overrated or overhyped? Oh, where do I begin? So, number 1, and I'm saying this now because I'm not going to use it for a later answer, but number 1, Joe Abercrombie. He is a fantastic author. He's a really good writer. He does create characters, but people act like he's like the best writer, and he's got a lot of flaws. He's not very good at plot in the books that I've read of his so far, and he doesn't ever like seem to realize that he can not like literally drip cynicism in every single word. Like, it's okay to like stop sometimes or pull yourself back and not have it come off as just kind of like condescending with how hard you're doing it. And so I know some people still like that even, but like I was pretty disappointed with the end of the First Law trilogy. I liked the first 2 books. I thought the standalones were pretty meh. And I know to an extent that is just not really my taste, but I also think a lot of people overlook the flaws because he has some things that he's really, really good at. And so that's definitely there. I also have to say George R.R. Martin, and I know this is also somewhat probably a style thing, because I just hate his writing style a lot. I could not finish A Song of Ice and Fire. I ended up quitting in like the middle of book 4. I just didn't care. I didn't care about any of the characters at all. He wrote in such a way that it just seemed like super perverted a lot of the time, just like so many of the things. And constantly repeated things. Yes, I know I'm a Wheel of Time fan. I don't know why it annoyed me much more with Martin, but he also, I know he's incredibly well known. The books are very much beloved. I think there's a lot of people who've written books that I think are a lot better than A Song of Ice and Fire. Sorry. And of course, because you might still be subscribed at this point, so I have to push more people away. But and this one, not really a disclaimer, but I will say I have not read any of his stuff. I'm going kind of different reasons, but Patrick Rothfuss. And I know a lot of people love Name of the Wind, and Wise Man's Fear seems to be a little bit more hit and miss, but he's written 2 books, people. 2 books! That's it! I hear people so often talk about him like he's the greatest author of all time. He's written 2 books in his entire career. Come on. Like, I'm going to read them probably eventually if the series ever gets finished. Even if it's amazing, like, you're really going to put somebody in that high of a tier for their 2 books when there's people who've had, been writing for 30 years and had all kinds of amazing books come out? It's just like, no. I can't do it. I can't do it. Let's move on before I take everybody off too much. I'm going to number 3. What is your least favorite book or books you've read since joining BookTube? So most of them came to mind pretty quickly, but I scrolled back through my Goodreads just to look for my worst ratings. Not a lot of surprise here, but Rhapsody by Elizabeth Hayden, which I hated. That book broke me, and not like because I was emotionally invested, because I hated it so much that I started to DNF books because of that book. I had pretty much never DNF'd before that, but I could not get through the last. It's like a 600-page book, and it is horribly, painfully slow, and the character is so annoying, and how everyone reacts to the main character is so annoying. So that was definitely one. Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, which I absolutely hated for a lot of reasons. I have a whole rant review of that one, so I'm not going to dig into it, but that's a book. It was actually, it was the buddy read for my channel is the only reason I finished it. I wanted to DNF it so many times. And then otherwise, Doom of the Dark Sword, which is the second book in the Dark Sword trilogy by Weiss and Hickman. And it saddens me to say that one of the worst books I've read was by Weiss and Hickman, because I love a lot of their Dragonlance stuff. The first book was solid. The second book was awful, and I DNF'd the third. It was real bad. It just kind of made no sense, and we stopped everything to have this horrible romance in book 2 that doesn't even matter at all in book 3. And I had to waste a whole book reading about it when it's just going to it doesn't matter anymore. And then book 3 also says, oh, everything you knew about the plot also doesn't matter. It's different now. No, thank you. It was real bad. Next up, what is a terrible ending that ruined an otherwise quality book? So I already kind of made my comment because Andrew said Last Argument of Kings here, and I agree. It just really soured my opinion of that whole trilogy because I disliked it so much. But I wanted to go with something different. And I have to say, it didn't ruin the book for me. So that's not necessarily a full disclaimer, but just saying that I still like the series. I still recommend people read the series. But the closest thing I could get, since I don't want to use Last Argument of Kings, was the Burning Light, which is the last book of Lightbringer. And it wasn't a bad ending. It just wasn't like a great ending. I really liked this series. I know a lot of people had problems with it throughout. I really liked it, and I just wasn't a huge fan of the ending. So it just kind of took this from like top tier level down to it's still a really good series, in my opinion, that I recommend. But if the ending would have been different, this would have been like a really high ranked series because I enjoyed so many aspects of it. So if you want to call that a disclaimer, call it. But that's as close as I could get that I could think of. Because even like I just talked about the Dark Sword trilogy, like the second book was terrible already, so the third book was worse. But I was already so checked out of that series at that point. So usually, if I haven't had any books that have had that terrible of an ending that I can think of. So that's what I went with there. All right, we have which fictional character do you wish was not killed off? So, entire series, Wheel of Time spoilers specifically happens in Memory of Light. I'll have a timestamp. You can jump past this question if you don't want to hear it. This is it wasn't even that they were killed off. I don't normally mind if characters are killed off, as long as it's done for a reason and done well. But Padan Fain, and I know even Sanderson has said that he messed it up and he didn't realize people really wanted an ending. But Padan Fain just died in the lamest, might as well have been off screen type moments. And so if he was gonna die, I would have liked to see him do better. But I also think the character could have been more interesting if we didn't really know what happened and he survived. So that's definitely one I didn't like how that was handled in a Memory of Light. So that's that one. Next up, what are some of your bookish pet peeves? So just people not taking care of books in general. It drives me nuts. I hate when people mash books down and break the spine on purpose because it's easier to read, or bend pages, or lick their finger and get their saliva all over the book. It's just treat your books better, dang it. That's why it's so hard sometimes buying used books, because you can get really lucky and find books that came from a good person who knows how to read books, or you can find some of those monsters that just rip them up. And I'm flashing right back now to Brian Lee Turpey's video about taking care of your books, where he savaged one of his own books to make a point. I'll link to that below. Why not? Thinking of it, but just people who don't take care of their books. And the other really big one is when you're trying to read a book and people keep interrupting you. And then they walk away and they're you're trying to continue reading and they come right back up again and you're like trying to read the same damn paragraph for 15 minutes. That's also really annoying. And I'm actually getting angry now, so I should move on to the next prompt. Okay. What are some books you feel should have more recognition? So we're going positive now. Okay. So some books that should have more recognition. And the one of course, I have to start with, Crown of Stars by Kate Elliott. The first book is King's Dragon. I've talked about this in several videos, I think, at this point. Really, really enjoy the series, and it just never gets talked about. So definitely one that I'd like to see get more attention. And then next up, you're around here somewhere, aren't you? Next up, the Durand Tales, or it never really had like a real name, so the Tales of Durand. It's a trilogy by David Keck. He's never written anything else since, because I don't think these didn't do too well. It actually, like, before the third book came out, they went out of print, and then they got reprinted by Tor, but this is a solid trilogy. The first book had some rough patches, but I thought it was good, and the second book was quite good as well, and I did like the ending as well. It's a really solid trilogy, and it's just another thing. I never hear anybody talk about this. I don't think ever heard or seen, and I've looked. Like, I did a underrated books one, and I was able to find like a few people who were talking about Kate Elliott, but no one that was talking about this book series. So definitely one that is interesting. It's kind of like a very, very medieval, like realistic medieval dark fantasy, low magic, really, really interesting series there. And then the other one I'll say is, which is actually two, but the Broken Empire and Red Queen's War trilogies by Mark Lawrence, because Mark Lawrence got pretty popular, but it was mostly for like the later books, like the Book of the Ancestor or whatnot. And his earlier trilogies aren't talked about as much. A lot of people read and didn't really care for Broken Empire, I guess, so at least there's that. But both of these trilogies were really good. And like Red Queen's War trilogy, I still like Broken Empire more. I think Red Queen's War was probably technically better written because he had grown, but these are really good trilogies, and I mean they're definitely way, 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 way more well known than the other two. But I just feel like they don't get a lot of the recognition they deserve, so I figured I'd include that in there too. All right, so what are your thoughts on censorship and banning books? Just like, don't. I mean, let people read what they want to read. I'm sure there's somebody who could point out something that's like worse, but it's just like, it's books. Let people read. I feel like this question, at least to me, it makes me think more of like the silly things where like we're banning this book in schools now, or maybe it's only one school, but it's going to be some news story you're going to have to hear about and everyone's going to talk about for weeks over some trivial thing. It's just like, I don't care. Read what you want to read. If you don't like something, don't read it. If you like something, read it. It's super simple stuff, folks. Super simple. All right, now it's time to tag people. So this time I specifically went for people that I think would be fun to see go off and spiritedly do this tag. So went first with a couple of people from around the Discord, and first would be Grace Dion, who's been around for a little bit, but I hadn't seen a lot of her stuff until a little bit more recently. She joined her Discord, and her videos are a lot of fun, and so I think it'd be really cool to see her go in and answer these. And then with Grace, Katie Without Knee, of course, they both are in the Discord and are a lot of fun, and they're, I think, actually good friends in real life as well. So I figured both of them, I don't think I've seen do this tag, and so it'd be fun. And Katie is actually like brand new, really, really new channel as well. And so going for one more new channel that I actually just came across, and once again, because I feel like based on the first video I watched, we'll have some strong opinions here as well, and that is Aiden from the Bibliosmith, who is a brand new booktuber and aspiring author, it sounds like, as well. And he had a lot of strong opinions in his newbie tag that he did, so I think it'd be really interesting to see him do this one as well. So those are the people that I'm going to tag. Like I said, I think they would be fun to see do this one. So that is the No Disclaimers book tag. If you're still watching this video and liked it, then make sure to give it a like. Make sure to check the link in the description for the Wizardly Duo Discord. And of course, if you'd like to see more of my content, despite all of the probably somewhat upsetting things that I've said in this video, make sure to subscribe.